Hey everyone! So I'm quite conscious that when I normally do quite in-depth book reviews, it's normally because I don't like the book, or I'm critiquing something, or I'm like debunking some bad science or something like that. And so today I wanted to do something a little bit different and talk to you a little bit in depth about a book that I really, really enjoyed and really want to recommend. For those of you who only watch like certain videos of mine, and obviously, you know, there's like 100,000 of you who don't know me personally. So I've kind of started trying to be a little bit more self-aware recently about like how I portray myself just sort of in general and like what people think of me. And like I feel like it might not be quite so obvious with like my online like videos and stuff, and I guess my online kind of not necessarily persona, but whatever it is I portray, like. But in real life, I'm actually quite a positive person. I don't really like to focus on the negative stuff. When I don't like stuff, I don't spend a long time talking about it. I just kind of like, I'm like, that's annoying. And then I move on. So, yeah, I guess I kind of want to bring a little bit more of that kind of more positive, happy, fun side of me to my videos. And make sure you guys actually see that, because I don't know how well I actually bring that across in some of my content. So today, the book I want to recommend and talk about is Women in Battle by Marta Breen. This is a gorgeous little graphic novel that serves as a fantastic introduction to the history of feminism, and I just think it's fantastic. If you have read this book, let me know down in the comments what you thought of it, what your favourite parts were, and whether you've read it or not, let me know who your favourite kind of strong, inspirational women from throughout history are. It doesn't matter if it's someone who's in this book or someone different. Let me know who your favourite kind of women in history are. One thing I will say about this book is that it's not overly long. It's probably like 120 pages. It's not really in-depth or anything, but it covers a huge range of topics and incidents and people and events. This book introduced me to some incredible women that I'd never heard of before, and that I now want to go away and find out more about and research more about and learn more about. Sorry, Kara's just over there making her bed on the settee, don't mind her. Are you trying to get comfy? I definitely recommend this book to probably teenagers in particular. I think it's a great, fun little introduction to the topic of feminism. But that said, I honestly think it's a book that can be given to any ages. If you're a parent with younger kids, for example, it might be a great kind of book to go through and read together and talk about some of the big kind of events and topics in it. Some of them aren't very nice. Some of them are tough topics. For example, it does talk about things like abortion, child marriage, female genital mutilation, but while they might not be nice to talk about, I think it is important to make kids kind of aware of these issues and understand them and feel kind of comfortable and confident talking about them and understanding why they're wrong and why they're an issue, regardless of what age they are. But I guess that's kind of like a decision for you to make as a parent about like what you want your kid to learn about when and stuff. Anyway, I'm rambling. So great for teenagers, great for kids. Or if you're an adult like I attempt to be, and you just enjoy beautiful books which are both entertaining and educational, then I thoroughly recommend it. It's kind of like a, no age limit book. It's just really, really fun and really good. So Women in Battle opens with the story that we all know. Women used to be property. We were owned by our fathers, and then we were owned by our husbands, and that was kind of it. We weren't even treated as individuals with lives or rights of our own. We were the property of others. Admittedly, not all societies were like this, and while there have been a few kind of incredible independent individual women throughout history, the fact is that for a long time in Western society, the majority of women were treated as less than human. And that's not okay. What I didn't actually realise before I read this book is that one of the biggest and first kind of steps forward for women in regards to like equal rights also came along with the abolition of slavery. So this book tells the story of incredible women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Harriet Tubman, who I'd never actually heard of before, but now I just can't wait to go and read more about them and the incredible things they did. And so that's kind of the cool thing about this book, is that it's lots of kind of very short stories about these amazing women, and it does make you want to go on and read more about them. Yeah, it's very kind of inspiring like that. The book then goes on to highlight what it calls the 3 most important causes the women's movement has fought for. These being the right to receive an education, get a job and earn one's own money, the right to vote in political elections, and the right to bodily integrity. To me, this is a pretty fantastic summary of why we needed feminism and why we still need feminism today. And it's not necessarily for women like me today. I'm lucky that here in the UK I got a good education, I can live by myself and work for myself, I can vote, I have complete control of what happens to my body, but not every woman around the world can say that. And I do kind of find that shocking and heartbreaking that, I don't want to do the whole it's 2019, can you believe? But also, it's 2019, can you believe that not all women have this? In so many countries around the world, there are women who aren't allowed to have an education, they aren't allowed to vote, they're still treated as the property of their husbands, they're married off as children or forced into arranged marriages. Even in countries like America, women's bodily autonomy is currently being threatened by the needlessly restrictive changes to abortion laws, and that's not okay. This is why we still need feminism. And it's not just for those reasons. There's so many more, but we'll get to them later in the video. The book then goes on to highlight some of the stories of the more prominent suffragettes and suffragists in the UK as they fought to try and get women the vote, especially in the early 1900s. The UK finally gave women over 30 the vote in 1918 after so many incredible, wonderful, brave, smart, hardworking women showed that they could step up during World War I, and they proved that we can do work as well as men. The stories of the suffragettes and the suffragists and their protests and I guess the kind of tensions between them and their different methods and everything like that, it's one that I know pretty well because this is one that we studied in quite a lot of detail in GCSE history in school. But what I particularly loved about Women in Battle as a book is that it doesn't just focus on these big stories like women getting the vote in the UK. It also puts an equal amount of focus on perhaps the lesser known women and feminist figures throughout history, which I really appreciated. For example, one story it tells is of Tahiri. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She was a poet in Iran in the 1800s, and she is considered kind of the first martyr, it's called. She constantly spent her life fighting against stereotypes and gender roles and men who were just constantly trying to oppress her. She was never allowed to learn or have an education, so even as a young child, when she wanted to, she would sneak into the lessons that her father taught, and she would read by herself and try and learn by herself, even though everyone around her, her father, her mother, her family, were trying to stop her and say, no, you can't do that, and they were shaming her for wanting to learn for herself. At 14, she was made to marry her cousin, who she hated, and even he hated the fact that she would read and try and educate herself. Eventually, she switched religions to one that treated men and women as kind of more equal to each other, and so her husband divorced her and took her kids away. According to this book, she spent the rest of her life fighting against misogyny in religion. Women weren't allowed to speak in public, so she did. Women were made to wear veils, so she removed hers. She was stoned in public, she was placed under house arrest, and she was eventually killed by being strangled by her own veil and thrown down a well. It's a dark story without a happy ending, but it's a powerful one, because here is a woman who, despite everything, despite the entire of society being against her, despite her family, her friends, her loved ones all being against her, she refused to give up, she refused to be silenced, and even today her story lives on. I think that's so important. Skipping forward a bit, another part of Women in Battle that I really, really enjoyed and was really impressed by was the part about, again, I hope I'm pronouncing these names right, but Margaret Sanger or Sangers? I think it's Sanger, who I actually think she might be worth making a whole video on at some point because she's a kind of incredible woman. She was a nurse in 1900s New York who noticed that women's sex education was severely lacking. Contraception was not easily accessible and abortion was just not an option, which led to a lot of women, mostly poor women, either having a ridiculous number of kids that they couldn't afford to look after and feed, or who would die from diseases, or the women were likely to die in childbirth very young, or it would lead to women who knew they couldn't have a baby or knew they couldn't look after a baby. It would lead to them hurting themselves, trying to perform at-home abortions, or all sorts of messed up stuff like that. Basically, the lack of sex education and the lack of options for women about their bodies just led to a lot of women being hurt and dying very young. Margaret Sanger, of course, was not happy with this. She was like, this is not okay. because it's not, right? So she started to educate women about their bodies, and she helped to open clinics which did provide contraception to women and taught them how to use it. She even worked with Gregory Pincus to create the first contraceptive pill. Kind of amazing, right? Sadly, for all her hard work, she was jailed a number of times for apparently spreading obscene materials, and yeah, she kept being jailed and released, and it wasn't easy for her at all, and a lot of people were very, very mad at her, but she didn't give up. And the number of women she helped, not only at the time, but who are still helped today by her incredible work, is just absolutely amazing, and that's why I think she's such an inspiring, amazing woman. Then in the book there are a series of sections about women finally being able to get legal, safe access to abortions. There's some stuff about female leaders and politicians in the 20th and 21st century. Then there's a fantastic part about the struggles of the LGBT plus community and why pride events are so necessary and important today. They're really good bits, thoroughly recommend them. Following on from this, the end of the book talks about why we still need feminism today. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people, I guess probably especially men, look at a woman like me in particular and think, well, you're doing all right. We don't need feminism anymore. Any feminists just want attention and they want to oppress men and meh, meh, meh. But this is such a narrow-minded, naive, and completely wrong view of the world. I acknowledge and I am so grateful for the fact that I am one of the lucky women. I am one of the women who has benefited from feminism in the past. I am well educated even though I came from a poor family. I was still able to work my way up over the last 12 years to the point where at 26 I am self-employed and completely independent. 100 years ago that would not have been heard of. There's literally no discrepancy today in how I am paid for this job that I do based on my gender. Living in the UK, I have access to free contraceptives and abortion up to 24 weeks should I ever need one. I live in a city where day to day I feel safe and happy. I'm not shamed for what I wear or how I wear it. I'm not forced to dress in a certain way. I choose what I wear. I choose who my friends are. I choose where I go. I choose who I date. I am incredibly lucky, and I want to use this incredible position I'm in to give a voice to the women who don't have this kind of voice and this kind of freedom yet. I want to help make sure that they're not forgotten about. Because even though I'm lucky, not all women are. There are women and men all over the world who don't have the freedoms that I do. And that's why we still need feminism. That's what feminism today is fighting for. To make sure all women can have the same freedom and independence that someone like me has. One of the main stories in this book that really kind of broke my heart but completely inspired me is the story of Malala. She is a young woman who grew up in Afghanistan in the late 90s, early 2000s, and she's only 4 years younger than me, so it kind of really hit home. In 2007, the Taliban enforced strict laws in the village where Malala lived, which prevented girls from going to school in the area. They even went as far as to burn the girls' schools to the ground. Malala was brave enough to blog about how this affected her and her life and why she wanted an education, and she told the world about everything that was going on and how she and her friends were suffering. As a result, she was threatened directly by the Taliban and eventually shot in the eye. Thankfully, she was brought here to the UK where she had surgery and she finished her education, and to this day she is still an incredible vocal spokesperson for children's right to education, especially girls' right to education. She received a Nobel Peace Prize for it, and she's just an absolutely incredible woman. And call me a little bit sheltered, but I didn't know about her before I read this book. And again, that's why I'm so happy it was in here, and I'm so happy I read it, because it highlights these incredible stories of incredible women who we might not hear of all the time, or who we might have missed, or I don't know. The end of Women in Battle also highlights how in so many countries around the world, women's education is restricted, but also what jobs they can do. For example, even in somewhere like Russia, there's a list of 400 jobs that women aren't allowed to do, or careers that women just aren't allowed to have, like bus driver, carpenter, fisher. It's ridiculous. And then, of course, there are some of the most troubling and important concerns and issues like child marriage, arranged marriages, female genital mutilation, human trafficking, sex trafficking. And these aren't nice issues. They aren't easy to talk about. They aren't easy to discuss. It's not very nice. It's very dark. It's not happy. But the more we talk about these issues, the more people become aware of them. And the more people become aware of them, the more people know that it's wrong. And we need to be on the lookout for how and why and when to stop this. And the sooner we do that, the sooner we can start taking steps to ensure no woman ever has to go through these things ever again. The book ends with a wonderful couple of lines that reads, "Nevertheless, the world is undoubtedly a better place for women than it was 150 years ago. Slowly but surely we are making progress. We need only dare to be heard." So yeah, I just kind of adored this book and I wanted to share it with you guys, and I have a feeling that there are a lot of you out there who watch my videos who will really, really enjoy this book and will get a hell of a lot out of it. I recommend it for children, for teenagers, for adults, for men, for women, for everyone. The only kind of small bits of like criticism or critique I would give it, or kind of like points for improvement, I would say are, I wish there'd been a slightly larger section that focused on transgender women and the struggles that they faced. It was touched on a little bit, it was mentioned, but not really in much detail. And again, I think that's probably one of the biggest feminist issues today that we really need to focus on, in making sure that transgender women are treated equally and fairly and never discriminated against, and that people realise that transgender women are just women, you know? So I think a little bit more of a focus on them in this book would have been really, really good. But that's just one area. And another thing is that I wish there'd been a section in the back of the book for either like sources or like a further reading list or something like that, so I could kind of like use that to go on and like find out some more about these women, or like read a little bit further or something like that. But yeah, that one's just kind of a small thing. Other than that, wonderful book. I think it's brilliant. I thoroughly recommend it. If you do want to check it out, I'll leave an Amazon link down in the description below. Other than that, don't forget to leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this book if you've read it, or what you think of it based on my video, and let me know who your favourite feminist figures are from throughout history. Go follow me on Instagram if you want to see more book recommendations from me. It's at Rachel Oates with an 0 instead of an O because I'm annoying. I mostly post kind of book recommendations on my stories and things like that, so you might want to like follow me and see them and stuff like that, I don't know. And last little self-promoting plug thing before I end the video is, if you like this kind of content and the kind of book content and the feministy content, you might also like one of the t-shirts I have available in my merch store. It's one of my favourite ones that I just kind of like absolutely love, and it was one of my favourite ones to design. And that is the Be Kind, Be Brave, Be Happy t-shirt. I love this one. I think it's kind of like, it's the way I try and live my life, and it's how I recommend for everyone to live their lives, just, you know, being kind and brave and happy. And I just kind of figured I'd like show it off a little bit to you guys, because I think it kind of fits with the theme of this book, and I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling. Check it out in my merch store if you want. There's a link in the description below as well. But for now, thank you so much for watching today. Sorry I'm a little bit of a rambler. Hopefully you liked this video. I don't know. I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much to everyone supporting me on Patreon this month, with a special thank you going to Data Jack, Gambit and Chauffeur, Loves Pantyhose Addiction, Christian Berg, Jadeon Sheppard, Robert Korte, Peter Kyrouac, Sir Michael Moore, Christina the Atheist, Christian Opitz, Sage Villarreal, Greg Ladd and Loren Hart. You and everyone else supporting me on Patreon is absolutely amazing, and I wouldn't be able to do this without you. Thank you so much.
Roaming for days so I don't have to go home, wasting my time listening to songs you wrote about some